The focus of this plenary is on energy, but we have very much to discuss, as you will see from the presentations that are going to be occurring later on. Hurricanes Irma and Maria highlighted energy vulnerabilities to climate change and the importance of rebuilding a resilient system, which also would take advantage of the island's resources, which are very well positioned to renewable energy, like solar, wind, and biogas from dairy. While the current electric system is highly dependent on fossil fuels, the goals are heightened on renewable energy. The recovery funding also provides a historic opportunity to provide improvements to the system and aligned the local needs to national and local goals. In addition to resiliency, another topic that is heightened during this meeting is the importance of environmental justice. And when it comes to energy in the region, we can really see the importance of that. It is underscored by the example of Puerto Rico, and I'm only speaking about Puerto Rico because I had worked on it, where the unemployment rate is over 20%, 3 times the national average. The poverty rate is nearing 45%, and yet the electricity rate is on the top 3 highest of the nation, over 2 times the US average. I'm very, very excited to be in the presence of our esteemed speakers, and I'm looking forward to their presentations. I will give the speech to Marisol Bonnet next, who is the manager of the Department of Energy's Puerto Rico Energy Recovery Team, a group within the Office of Electricity, which is fully dedicated to supporting federal and Commonwealth entities in implementing over $12 billion of federal recovery funds for the island's electric sector. In this role, Marisol, closely with energy stakeholders, works to ensure that investments will result in modern infrastructure system that can be affordable, reliable, and resilient, while also complying with the public policy and renewable energy targets. So Marisol, welcome, and looking forward to your presentation.
Thank you again, and thank you for the organizers for having me and putting together this wonderful and really important conference. I'm really excited to be here. Again, my name is Marisol Bonnet, and I have the honor really to be the lead for a team within the U.S. Department of Energy that is solely focused on supporting Puerto Rico, the government of Puerto Rico, and its public entities in recovering and rebuilding the energy system. So today I'm going to talk about a little bit just context setting, talking about the current status of the Puerto Rico energy system, some of the things that we're going to be seeing coming down the line, recovery funding, some of the ongoing policy and activities, and then narrow it down to how DOE is helping in all of this and the reason why my team exists. So Maggie touched on some of these points, but again, I like to start kind of big picture and setting the context. Puerto Rico, probably a lot of you know, but our energy system really relies almost entirely on imported fossil fuels. We have plants that are along the coast, and so we rely on transmission lines that go through mountainous terrain, the Cordillera across the island. Right now, you can see in this pie chart our energy mix as of the end of 2021, and you can see that renewable energy really comprises only 3% max of the generation mix. For this reason, consumers pay up to 3 times more for electricity than the average US mainland consumer. And this is despite the fact that Puerto Ricans use a lot less energy than the US mainland consumers. For example, being in a tropical climate, we don't have heating requirements. The average customer also loses power at least once every 5 to 6 weeks, which is a lot more than the US mainland customers that lose power 1 to 2 times per year. So this lack, as we see, of energy reliability really impacts the everyday life of Puerto Ricans and also the economic activity of Puerto Rico's residents and businesses. As Maggie mentioned, we saw in 2017 how vulnerable our system is to contingency events, to storm events, and how important it is to think about how to make the system more resilient. So I think we all know in 2017 in September 6th, first we got Hurricane Irma that knocked out power to almost 1 million customers. And then 2 weeks later, we had Hurricane Maria that crossed, you can see on the image here, across the entire island from southeast to northwest, again, through the transmission lines that go across the island. Puerto Rico, the utility hadn't even finished getting power back from Irma when we got Maria, and so that double punch really led to 80% of the system being knocked down of the electric grid. You can see some figures here at the bottom. Really, the generation plants didn't suffer all that much damage, but the transmission and distribution system was almost completely destroyed. And so if you don't have you have the generation far from the load and you don't have the system to deliver that electricity, that really leads to a lack of resilience. And as you all know, this really resulted in one of the largest blackouts in the world's history, with some customers getting power over a year after the hurricane. So the opportunity, however, after Maria, the federal government authorized over $12 billion, specifically earmarked for rebuilding and transforming the energy sector. So on the left side of this table here, you have the FEMA funds that were authorized. This is both for restoring energy infrastructure owned by the utility, and also for, on the left side, for mitigating impacts of future events. And then from the Housing and Urban Development Department, there's also over $2 billion in funding, 1.9 billion allocation that was specifically earmarked for rebuilding the energy system, addressing the needs of low and moderate income communities, increasing resilience. And then there's other allocations that will also be used to improve the energy sector, some of the programs you can see listed there. But it is important, though, that these funds are not invested and implemented in a vacuum. We know that the hurricane was almost 5 years, the hurricanes were almost 5 years ago, but we're still at the very early stages of implementing these funds for various reasons. So we still have a good opportunity to make sure that we do this right, that we build back better, and that we align these funds with the federal and public policy of the island. The energy public policy being, of course, Act 17, we know that it sets statutory goals for the generation that the utility has to procure or provide through renewable energy sources, all the way to 100% by the year 2050, but also with interim goals. There's other requirements in that law related to transforming the energy sector, like reducing energy use, replacing public lighting with LED, eliminating coal-fired generation by December 2027, and complying with an integrated resource plan that is evaluated and approved by the Puerto Rico Energy Bureau. I'll let Commissioner Mateo speak to the integrated resource plan during her remarks. But really important to have the regulator as the entity that is really enforcing and overseeing the public policy. In addition to Act 17, there's a lot of other regulatory proceedings that we have to take into account. There's a lot of moving pieces, all really important for the future of the energy system. There's a regulatory proceeding around electric vehicle deployment, implementing the first ever energy efficiency and demand response programs on the island. brand new wheeling and unbundling regulations, and microgrid and interconnection regulations as well. And so what this leads us to is that for us to know exactly what investments and what actions and activities and policies are needed to get to the goals that are established in Act 17 and all the other statutory requirements, we really need complex analyses to answer these questions. So for example, how do we even get to 100% renewable energy by 2050? What are the different potential pathways, whether it's a more distributed and decentralized system or large scale, utility scale, solar and wind farms? What changes are needed in the infrastructure to get to those changes? If the system is going to be still centralized, do we need to build new transmission lines? Do we need to harden the distribution system? What investments are needed? What happens to the demand if Puerto Ricans start adopting or electrification or energy technologies like electric vehicles? What are the impacts of uncontrolled charging times, for example? What are the impacts of air conditioning or even rooftop solar? What does that do to the demand out to the years that we're looking at to 2050? How can we make sure that the system is designed in a way that is resilient under extreme weather events, especially as we know that these events are going to be more common and frequent moving forward? What are the impacts of reaching these goals on jobs and the local economy, and what will it cost overall? And so for this reason, having these questions in mind, talking to stakeholders, both community organizations, industry, and our Puerto Rico public entities, we have designed what we're calling the PR 100 initiative, which is really a way to answer those questions and evaluate different pathways that are feasible to reaching those goals, and having the data and information at hand to be able to evaluate the trade-offs and the impacts between these different pathways. With the key activities being, of course, community engagement. So this study is being completely grounded on the needs and priorities specific to Puerto Rico and the communities that participate in the energy sector. So we have formed an advisory group that has over 60 members right now, representing a broad spectrum of sectors, academia, community organizations, NGOs, manufacturing industry. The utility and the regulator participate in it as well. We're going to be doing scenario generation and modeling. So looking, like I mentioned, there's the demand side, looking at demand projections and what are the different assumptions or changes that might be expected from here to 2050, the different things that might impact demand, and then looking at the potential sources of generation. So doing a resource assessment for rooftop and utility scale solar, for on and offshore wind, for hydropower and marine resources. So having the data available to understand what are the costs and the potential resources of generation, renewable generation. And then once you define the scenarios, then you can start looking at the impacts of all of them. And so key considerations for the different scenarios: energy justice. So I mentioned community engagement. That's one aspect of energy justice, trying to get better at procedural justice and making sure that people and residents have a voice in this planning process as we design the scenarios, as we define what is even energy justice and the metrics for Puerto Rico. Affordability, reliability, and resilience are core themes throughout this study. These are all going to be evaluated in the different scenarios. Reliability, we're going to be doing power flow models, looking at the performance of the system for the different scenarios, and then resilience, looking at how would the system perform under contingency event, failure modes of the transmission system, fragility curves for the renewable energy systems from rooftop solar to utility scale solar. Climate change vulnerability, one of the big tasks under the study is doing a downscale climate change model and risk assessment for Puerto Rico, and being able to evaluate based on the potential impacts of climate change that we're going to be seeing, from droughts to flooding, sea level rise. How is that going to impact the energy infrastructure specifically, and how will the impact on energy infrastructure cascade down to other interdependencies like water treatment plants and such. And then looking at the economic impacts, job impacts, emissions, impacts of all the different scenarios. In terms of project timeline, so the project kicked off officially January of this year. We have been working with the stakeholder group I mentioned, the advisory group that meets monthly throughout the development of the scenarios. So these 4 initial scenarios are going to be ready by June of this year. By year 1, which is December of this year, we're going to have high resolution data sets for wind and solar resource. We also will have hydropower and marine resource data, and that's going to allow us to refine the scenarios to reach 3 feasible scenarios by the end of this year. And then once we have these scenarios defined is when we can begin the impact modeling and analysis. So final report and data and visualizations will be ready by December 2023. But of course, it's not like you won't hear from us for 2 years. This is going to be a process where working together with the advisory group, meeting on a monthly basis, keeping everyone apprised of progress. There's also different ways to remain engaged. We have, once you get these slides, this is actually a hyperlink, so you can click to sign up for our mailing list. We have a website in English and Spanish where you can access links and reports and white papers. And we're also setting up a platform called Mobilize that's more for community building and information sharing, but we'll use to keep everyone appraised of the progress that we're making throughout the study. So with that, thank you so much again for the time, and I look forward to the Q&A towards the end of the session. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Marisol. Much appreciated and a really good presentation. We already have some questions in the Q&A, so definitely there's a lot of interest in this study. So our next speaker is Aaron Nee. Please correct me if I got your last name wrong. He serves as a project manager and U.S. Virgin Island Recovery Coordinator at the U.S. Department of Energy. In this role, he manages projects under the Energy Transitions Initiative, which aims to advance self-reliant communities through the development of resilient energy systems. Aaron also coordinates the department's long-term energy sector recovery efforts in the U.S. Virgin Islands. Aaron, welcome, and I'm giving you the floor.
Thank you again for that kind introduction, and thank you everyone for being here today. Thank you, Mari, for that great presentation. I know it's always hard to follow you. But hello everyone, I'm Irene with the U.S. Department of Energy, and like Mari, I work on the energy sector recovery in U.S. territories, but my purview is the U.S. Virgin Islands, which will be what I'll be discussing today. Like Mari, we do a lot of very similar things, so hopefully I won't be too duplicative. And we'll discuss, we'll first begin this discussion with a few of the USVI's energy strategies that entities in the territory have developed or are developing. And then I'll discuss and dive in on DOE's role in the USVI recovery. And we'll begin with the various technical assistance capabilities that we offer and the projects that we're conducting to help the USVI achieve their recovery goals and their GHG reduction strategies. And then I'll briefly discuss the energy technical coordination team that we work on. We'll finish the presentation with additional opportunities at DOE that either territory could really use to continue on with their success in meeting their greenhouse gas reduction strategies. So just to begin, following the 2017 storms, the territory has seen some opportunities to renew their ambitions and establish strategies and goals as they develop a stronger energy system. That includes WAPA's Integrated Resources Plan and Strategic Transformation Plans, which include goals that increase renewable capacity to at least 50% by 2044. It also includes a Vision 2040 plan, which has an even more aspirational goal for renewables to represent 75% of total energy consumption by 2040. The USVI has also received some Department of Energy funding to develop a comprehensive energy strategic plan, which you'll hear about later from the University of the Virgin Islands. While these plans are publicly available, DOE also engages with the territory to stay abreast of their ambitions and priorities that may span beyond what's listed here. But again, I'll let the territory speak more about their efforts and priorities in the following presentation. Instead, I'm here today to focus more on what DOE has done to help USVI's goals to recover, build resilience, and reduce GHG emissions. The following discussion will demonstrate how DOE contributes and can continue to contribute to the territory's recovery and strategies to reduce GHG emissions. Before we go into a few projects examples, as part of the USVI recovery, DOE's subject matter expertise is used to augment planning, operational activities, and capacity building for both local public entities and other federal agencies to enhance the impact of FEMA public assistance, hazard mitigation, and also the HUD investments in the territory, amongst other recovery investments. And you'll remember those funding streams from Mari's presentation. We work under a FEMA interagency reimbursable work agreement, which has supported the various projects I'll be discussing soon. And just to note, these projects are managed by DOE, but they're executed by 3 of our excellent national labs: the National Renewable Energy Laboratory, Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory, and Sandia National Laboratory. The hope is to continue providing similar assistance for the territory beyond the projects that I'll discuss. But now let's just take a deep dive into those projects. The first one I wanted to highlight is a hosting capacity analysis. This analysis essentially looked at both of USVI's systems to see whether it could accommodate additional renewable generation. With this analysis, the territory and the authority can determine whether it is feasible to interconnect new generation and fast-track approvals. As the distribution system continues to be updated and built out, we are standing by to assist the territory with further hosting capacity analysis updates. Related to the hosting capacity analysis, DOE and its national labs also worked with the territory to establish new interconnection requirements and procedures. The goal was to streamline interconnection applications and to update the requirements to ensure safety and power quality. Not only did the labs work with the territory to update these processes, but they also worked with the territory to ensure key staff were all properly trained. DOE and its national labs are still engaged in this process to provide additional assistance. So on the customer side, if you're attempting to interconnect rooftop solar, for example, or install rooftop solar, you'll likely experience this process. Also related to how the system manages renewable generation, NREL, the National Renewable Energy Laboratory, has also conducted a dynamic stability analysis in St. Croix. This study helps the Water and Power Authority, WAPA, maintain stable and reliable system operations as more inverter-based resources are added to the power system. The current work has analyzed system stability in anticipation of 2 solar installations on St. Croix, which include some battery storage. The final product will be delivered to the authority soon, and NREL is also helping collect data for a similar study on the St. Thomas and St. John system. DOE and its national labs not only help understand how planned renewable generation may impact the system, but we can also assist with identifying and assessing suitable sites for renewable generation. On the three main islands in the USVI, DOE and NREL, for example, have conducted various site identification projects in collaboration with the territory. And we are still ready and willing to conduct more as the territory plans to scale up its renewable resources. But beyond just conducting studies and analysis, DOE and its national labs are also poised to provide workshops and trainings. With the USVI, we have already conducted microgrids, inverter-based resources, and cost of service rate making workshops and/or trainings for our stakeholders. If the territory needs further assistance, DOE and its national labs can also provide other energy-related workshops as well. Just to add to what our capabilities are, DOE and its national labs also provide review and advising services. For instance, DOE and Lawrence Berkeley National Lab have been working with the USVI to establish the Net Energy Billing Program, which is currently in its interim phase. And this program helps interconnect more distributed renewable generation in the territory. The Lawrence Berkeley National Lab further developed a solar savings calculator as part of this initiative to ensure that islanders and developers understood how the program worked and how they could save with renewable generation. Furthermore, DOE and its national labs have provided reviews of several documents for the territory. For example, we helped review the IRP, some RFPs and RFIs, and we use some of the aforementioned analyses and studies to inform those reviews. While DOE provides all this technical assistance and stands ready to provide more, it also coordinates all federal and territorial partners as part of the Energy Technical Coordination Team. And this Energy TCT meets quarterly, and DOE facilitates it in coordination with FEMA, who is a co-lead. We have various working groups as demonstrated in the slide, and the purpose of this TCT, as described on the slide, is to pursue the most cost-effective recovery and resilience solutions with the resources of the federal interagency, territorial agencies, NGOs, and private sector in a unified and collaborative approach. We hope to use the TCT's collective energy, expertise, and resources in support of the development and implementation of recovery and resilience projects in the USVI. Currently, the Built Environment Working Group, as listed, has recently joined forces with UVI's Sustainable Buildings Focus Group as part of the Comprehensive Energy Strategic Plan development. Beyond what I've discussed in terms of projects and coordination of USVI recovery efforts, DOE also has other programs that may interest the USVI as we all work together to reach emissions reductions goals with clean energy. For example, there's the State Energy Program and the Weatherization Assistance Programs, which I know USVI has participated in the past. There are various new funding streams from the infrastructure bill that was recently passed. And also there are programs like the National Community Solar Partnership. DOE is always providing new opportunities. And if you're interested in energy efficiency and renewable energy or other energy infrastructure funding opportunities, hopefully when the slides are shared, you can click into these links to find further funding opportunities on the linked exchanges. Looking forward to the questions and discussions later, and thank you all for your time.
Shared my video. Moving forward, we're going to have Ariel Stolz. She serves in the Caribbean Green Technology Center at the University of the Virgin Islands as a research scientist. She works on various sustainability and community projects related to energy, sustainable materials management, water and food security, as well as disaster risk reduction. We're looking forward to her input about resilience, equity, and environmental justice for the Caribbean as well. She will be discussing the U.S. Virgin Islands Comprehensive Energy Strategy, our energy vision for the future. So Ariel, I give you the floor.
Hello and good morning to fellow presenters, and thank you for the introduction. And also good morning to everybody listening in today. As Maggie mentioned, my name is Ariel Stolz, and I work at the Caribbean Green Technology Center as a research scientist. My background is that I studied mechanical engineering at Brown University and then continued my education at Carnegie Mellon University, where I received an interdisciplinary degree in energy science, technology, and policy. Now I'm back in my hometown of St. Thomas, working at the university on topics related to energy and sustainability. So I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen. So at the Caribbean Green Technology Center, our mission is to develop, promote, and help implement the use of innovative green technologies to improve social development of the U.S. Virgin Islands and the well-being of all the territory's communities. And we do this with a focus in 4 areas, which are disaster risk reduction, energy, water and food security, and sustainable materials management. So right now, I'm going to be talking mostly about the energy piece of those 4 areas. As Irene mentioned before about some of the federal government and DOE's involvement in recovery efforts and technical assistance programs following the hurricanes Irma and Maria, he also mentioned the comprehensive energy strategy. And that is in development right now, partnership between the BI Energy Office and the University of the Virgin Islands. So the Comprehensive Energy Strategy Plan, or CESP, is a long-term blueprint to focus and guide efforts and actions towards a defined and shared energy vision based on community principles. And the goal is that these will help us together towards a brighter, cleaner, and more sustainable future in the USVI. The goal is to establish short-term and long-term objectives that will progress the VI's energy sector and that are very aligned with the community's vision. So, why is it important that we update this plan? The last energy plan was drafted in 2009. And this was really when coincided with an uptick in federal funding or federal stimulus package for the entire United States, especially with energy programs. Unfortunately, as this funding started to run out, so did many of these programs. And they were not exactly renewed after they ended. And so, many of these goals set by the 2009 energy plan were kind of just left as they were. However, following 2017, the hurricanes really acted as a wake-up call. The energy sector was extremely destroyed, and so there was a need to build back better. And with this, the community really called for an increase in renewable energy, as well as making the sector more robust and resilient. That being said, the USVI is lagging behind in renewable energy penetration compared to its neighbors in the Caribbean, which is shown on the graph on the left. As Aaron mentioned, that it's right now at 1% of our total energy generation. However, some strides have been taken in recent years, especially following the hurricanes in 2017. So on the graph on the right, you can see following 2017, there's a decoupling of CO2 emissions and energy production or energy generation. This is mainly due to changes in the dependence on fuel oil and switching it to LPG, which is more efficient and has less emissions. But this is really just a small step, and the real transformation that's necessary includes much more renewable energy in the future, which will help us with reducing greenhouse gas emissions as well as becoming more resilient. And right now, a lot of the push from renewable energy is actually coming from the residential sector. This is a map of household solar installations on rooftops. And it's really a reaction to the high cost of electricity and the frequent blackouts, which make electricity unreliable. And so the VI community has shown us that they're ready for this transition to renewable energy. So why is it important that we plan this effort or plan this transition? And so I think that, or we believe that a strategic plan is necessary so that we can, for all of these things, so we can understand our current situation and make data-driven decisions towards the energy transition that the community is really calling for. Having this continuously updated plan means that the choices we make today can capitalize on synergies and progress us forward instead of hindering development towards our long-term goals. So the plan will consist of various pieces, such as the steering committee, which includes representation from Virgin Island stakeholders in both government agencies and in the community. Everything in the plan is really guided by the vision that was set by the steering committee early on. The main pieces in this plan is the data gathering and analysis, as well as policy review, which is conducted by the research team here at the Caribbean Green Technology Center, as well as our close partners at the VI Energy Office, alongside input from the community through our steering committee and other stakeholder engagement exercises. And this is hopefully will come together to give us goals and strategies that we can implement. The other piece is that it will need to be monitored and updated over time. And so when the final plan is published, it's important that we hold ourselves accountable and that we continue to monitor our progress while allowing our strategies to be flexible in case of unknowns or technological advances, so we can make our goals more ambitious as the years go by. So part of any planning effort is a vision. To craft the energy vision for the VI Comprehensive Energy Strategic Plan, we asked the community via the steering committee, what does the USVI look like in 20 to 30 years? We had a lot of responses and we noticed some underlying themes, such as resilience, equity, economic development, and the environment. We then used a survey to really finalize our energy vision. To create a resilient, equitable, and sustainable energy sector that promotes innovation and economic development while reducing environmental impact for generations to come. We used the word cloud that you saw before, as well as conversations within the steering committee to help us determine the scope of the plan. And we settled on 3 areas of focus: power generation and electrical grid, sustainable buildings, and transportation. These groups met weekly or bi-weekly to discuss that specific sector and to listen to informative presentations about these topics from experts in the field. Following all the presentations, group members were asked to brainstorm ideas for achieving the energy vision that I had outlined before. So here is an example of one of the sessions that was in the sustainable buildings group, where we posed a question about what are things we need to consider, and we got lots of ideas from the community. The leadership team at Caribbean Green Technology Center and VI Energy Office will then go back and take all of these ideas into consideration when developing the first pass at goals, strategies, and actions. Then present those back to the steering committee and to the general public for feedback, and then finally finalize the plan. So to summarize, while the energy sector is vital to modern life, it's increasingly unsustainable in the face of climate change. And therefore, an energy transition is necessary if we want to follow the global trend towards reducing greenhouse gas emissions. Having a strategic plan gives us a blueprint and a sustained effort to reach our vision. And in order to make these strides forward, we need to look at where we are now, where we want to be, and then decide how we want to get there. Anything for the territory must come out of the community. And so having public support and engagement is vital to any successful energy transition. This plan will touch upon power generation, electrical grid, transportation, and sustainable building sectors, and includes, and with the focus of our energy vision, which is to be resilient, to be equitable, to be sustainable, to promote economic development, and to reduce environmental impact for generations to come. Thank you so much for listening, and I look forward to your questions at the end of the panel.
Thank you so much, Ariel. And finally, I will have the opportunity to introduce to you Lillian Mateo-Santos. She's going to be the last presenter in our panel. She is the commissioner of Puerto Rico's Energy Bureau. Before joining the Puerto Rico Energy Bureau, Ms. Mateo-Santos practiced law by focusing on energy, environmental, land use, and permitting matters, including administrative law litigation. So thank you so much. It's great to have you here, and I'm giving you the floor, Lillian.
Okay, I am one of the 5 commissioners.
The title of your presentation, sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. It is the approved IRP and modified action plan. This is the roadmap for Puerto Rico's transition to a 100% renewable energy sector. The IRP is a requirement mandated by law for the Puerto Rico Electric Power Authority. That entity is a government-owned company that provides the electric service in Puerto Rico. We do not have, contrary to other jurisdictions, we do not have multiple energy providers in the island. So the IRP is the instrument or mechanism that we are using as a jurisdiction to plan this transformation. And the IRP needs to be based on the least cost alternatives or resources to provide a reliable, resilient, and affordable service to all the Puerto Rico clients. This plan has also, it needs to consider and take into account compliance with all the applicable public policy, which includes the different RPS or renewable energy portfolio standards milestones. As it has been mentioned before, we have the goal to be 100% by 2050, but it's going to go into increments. In the most recent amendments to Act 82 of 2010, in 2019, we need to achieve 40% of renewable energy by 2025. To that extent, in 2020, the Energy Bureau completed the evaluation of PREPA's IRP, and through a final resolution, we established the approved IRP, which included an action plan to implement the IRP. The IRP required the procurement of renewable energy through competitive proceedings, meaning RFPs. This is the first time this is being done. Previously, there was bilateral negotiation between developers of projects and PREPA, which never gave us a clear signal of what the prices for that procurement were. So that has already been commenced. We are in the final stage of the first tranche. There will be 6 tranches. We are, the goal is to obtain 3,500 megawatts of energy by 2025, and approximately 1,500 in energy storage. This renewable energy goal is agnostic in terms of technology, so it could be any renewable energy source that is recognized in the local laws. So it could be wind, it could be solar, it could be geothermal, it could be pump storage, hydro, any of the recognized renewable energy resources. The IRP also mandated PREPA to start the energy efficiency and demand response programs. This is in accordance with public policy. We have the mandate by law to achieve a 30% of energy efficiency by 2040. Energy efficiency, as many of the people in this conference know, is the best alternative because it reduces the need to, is the best investment because it reduces the need to develop or build any new infrastructure. So it reduces emissions and it reduces capital investments, and it is a general knowledge that for every dollar invested in energy efficiency, it's like you were investing $3 in infrastructure. So it's a good mechanism. We are conducting right now a study to determine the specific programs that are going to be implemented, trying to make them as much tailor-made as possible to Puerto Rico's needs, so we can take the advantage, as much advantage possible from low-hanging fruits in terms of the Puerto Rico sector. The IRP also require PREPA to retire many generation units. This was determined after an analysis and modeling with a series of multiple sensitivities and scenarios, and these units will be retired as soon as the replacement capacity is already in operation, which is expected to take place starting from 2024. With the purpose of complying with the RPS in a timely fashion by 2025. In addition, these retirements will help alleviate greenhouse gases and other pollutants that the energy sector is one of the biggest contributors. And if you consider that in Puerto Rico, we're using fossil fuels in a significant amount, that retirement is going to be a big contributor to reducing those pollutants. There is also in the IRP, in the plan, is considered the retirement of the coal plant that is operated by AES in Guayama under a contract with PREPA as an independent power producer. That operation using coal is mandated to be ceased by the end of 2027 when their contract ends they can no longer use that fossil fuel. We also have the concept of mini grids under the IRP. The purpose of that is to try to make the grid more resilient by hardening the infrastructure and trying to make the grid into a system that can be segmented to avoid island-wide outages and to keep other parts of the island that are not affected by a system, by a natural disaster working while we repair the others. The DG integration was considered in the IRP. We also consider virtual power plants. And in the last months, the DG integration and penetration in the system has increased exponentially. We are having, by the T&D operator, approximately 1,500 applications and interconnections per month. So that's increasing. And the Energy Bureau has approved 20 projects that total an excess of approximately 1,000 megawatts between the RFP that I mentioned and 2 other projects that were previously approved. Those are utility scale projects, but the IRP contemplates a diverse mix of DG and utility scale projects. And the procurement that I mentioned doesn't preclude the integration of DG throughout the system. The retirements of the units from PREPA are going to significantly contribute to climate change in terms of reducing emissions. And one of the aspects of the IRP is the consideration of climate change aspects. And in this last IRP, the discussion was not as thorough as we wanted it, but PREPA was mandated to do it in the next cycle because the IRP is revised every 3 years. So that's going to be a very important subject in this new cycle. I wanted to mention that in terms of public participation, the IRP is an adjudicative procedure. We have had multiple interveners that have brought experts to the discussion, and there is an island-wide public hearings and commenting periods to gather everybody's considerations into the record so we can review everything about that. So if anybody has any questions, I'm available to answer them.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Lillian. So we have a very short time for questions. I was under the impression we ended up 10:45, but it seems we end at 10:30. So I will urge the presenters to please try to answer questions on the chat. I hope you can see me. I think I was having some technical problems. And I will go ahead and start with one question that I was told is always asked. And I will bring it up right now. How do the IRP and the Puerto Rico 100 interact? This question goes out to Lillian and to Marisol.
Well, the Puerto Rico 100 study, we are actually part of the steering committee, the Energy Bureau, and we have welcomed this study because it's gonna allow us to have additional information that we can consider in the IRP. Nevertheless, we need to recognize that there is a regulatory process for the approval of the IRP. So all this information can be gathered and inform the process, but it's gonna be, you know, a great assistance to the decision making that finally takes place in the regulatory process. But it's going to give us a lot of information on how we can get to the 2050, 100% in the easiest way, because the goal is to achieve that public policy in the easiest and most sustainable way.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Marisol, do you have any further comments?
Yeah, I agree completely with what Commissioner Mateo said. The one thing I would add is that the timing of the study and the next IRP cycle are completely aligned, and that's not entirely coincidental. So the idea is working with the regulator and working with the utility, that a lot of the data and information analysis that we're doing is going to directly inform the next IRP. And so our study, as you saw, ends December 2023. And the next IRP is actually due January of 2024. And so it was designed in that way that the utility can take advantage of the capabilities of the labs and all the data we're producing and analysis and stakeholder engagement to inform the next cycle.
Thank you so much. I have another question from the audience that says, have any of the FEMA funds been obligated to the Puerto Rico government yet? And has any work started with those funds?
That's a very interesting question, and it has caused a lot of conversation locally recently. The funds have been, as far as I know, obligated. The entities responsible for requesting funds for specific projects have been working on the different documents that they have to submit to FEMA. So they should be starting work this year at some point. And that's work for the reconstruction, the actual reconstruction of the system, because work was done after the hurricanes to patch up the system. This new work has a different view. Rather than patching up, is reconstructing and modernizing to the extent possible under FEMA requirements.
Thank you so much. Do we have any further comments on this?
And if I may, Meg, this work is so significant that we may be working on the reconstruction for 10 years. There is significant work to be done. This is not going to be solved in 3 years or completed in 3 years because of the order of magnitude of the changes that have to be made in the aftermath of the hurricanes.
One other question from the audience. What measures the DOE or other project-sponsored department agencies are taking to make sure important farmland for food production, which is very limited in Puerto Rico and the US Virgin Islands, do not get compromised with projects for energy production?
Yeah, I can start and
go ahead.
And I'll turn it over quickly to the USVI folks. But at least on the PR 100 side, we're doing the resource assessment, as I mentioned, for utility scale solar and onshore wind as well. And so part of what we're doing with the advisory group is making sure that we capture exclusion zones well, that we don't suggest that we're going to be building projects on areas that have high cultural, social, or agricultural value. And in the instance that a certain zone has high in agriculture, also correlates with high solar energy potential, we might look at it through innovative technologies like vertical farming, but we would have to assign, of course, it comes at a higher cost. So making sure that we assign to those areas the cost that would correspond with building sustainable technologies. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and just real quick to add to Mari's response, we take similar approaches. As I mentioned, we have site identification projects. We have the TCT where we coordinate with all partners to make sure that we're not stepping on anyone's toes, especially agricultural farmland. And I know we work and consult and provide advice related to land leases and for renewable projects. So there's certain contingencies that are filtered into our process that ensure that we aren't that we're paying attention to the land energy nexus.
Thank you so much. I wanted to ask our co-hosts if they could please ask some of a couple of the Spanish questions that we have. We have some Spanish questions in the Q&A. I don't know if Celia or Andrea would be able to please ask a couple of those. And we
Hello,
do
Megan. Yes, of course. Should I translate them or should I read them in Spanish?
As you please, we do have interpretation. So.
Okay, good. So from Alan Rivera, él pregunta, ¿hay fondos para la investigación y desarrollo de fabricación de baterías de carga profunda, ácido plomo o de otros tipos?
This Commissioner Mateo, I think that there may be opportunities under the Act 60 for some research for energy matters. I understand that that is handled by the Department of Economic Development and Commerce in Puerto Rico. So it would be a matter of taking that conversation with them. They handle the implementation of that act.
Okay, thank you. Here's another question from
I think that it might be a good idea to interpret the question as well.
Oh, okay.
Ask it in Spanish and then interpret it as possible.
The answer.
No, the question. The next question, please.
Okay, good. This is also from Alan Rivera. He asks, the PREC, these are in Spanish, PREC, has it clearly established the form and manner in which it is available as a mediation mechanism in matters of third-party contacts in all ranges, residential, commercial, and industrial, in matters concerning energy disputes?
We have a regulation to that effect that provides the use of mediation as a mechanism. And there is another, the usual route, which is adversarial. And you can find our regulations in our website. But there is mediation is available. Obviously, it has to do with matters in which the sale of energy is involved. If it's the installation of a system, that's a product, and that has to be addressed by the Puerto Rico Consumers Department's Consumer Affairs Department rather than the Energy Bureau, because it's not under our jurisdiction.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. So there was a question for Aaron. Is DOE an active participant in the community engagement effort in the US Virgin Islands along with the local government? Or is the role to just be responsive to technical requests?
Yeah, so one role is being responsive to technical requests, but again, we have that TCT where we work with the local government and local government partners. And Ariel has been kind enough to invite us to the focus groups related to the Comprehensive Energy Strategic Plan, where we have been involved in hearing what local partners been involved in their community engagement as well. So we do try our best to be involved in. I think our priority is to make sure that we understand the community's priorities. So I think this is a crucial part of what we do.
I have one more question for Ms. Stolz. And with this question, we will be closing our meeting afterwards. What is the timeline envisioned for the US Virgin Island CESP? The slide only says future.
Yes, so that's a really good question. Our timeline is looking forward into the next 20 to 30 years as we We had asked the steering committee what they see for that timeline, and that's what we plan to have the plan encompass. But the actual timeline for the plan completion is to have a first draft for community input by the end of this year.
Well, thank you so much. That concludes this plenary. We have been a couple minutes over, so I appreciate everybody's patience. I please ask the presenters to offer responses to the questions, and Andrea and Celia, if you can transfer any questions that were posed in the chat in the Q&A for the presenters' response in writing. Thank you so much and have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.